I observed my future mother-in-law laughing with her friends about how she had managed to secure a simple, unsophisticated son-in-law. My future mother-in-law, who is set for life, made me realize that I would not be able to leech off of her. I am 32 years old and am getting married to my fiancée, Deborah, who is 31 years old. We have been together for 2 years and I just asked her to marry me last month. I am head over heels for this wonderful woman and cannot wait to spend the rest of my life with her. We come from very different backgrounds. I grew up in a working-class family, while Deborah came from a more affluent background. My family and I are of modest means, with 2 siblings. We were always required to work hard, living paycheck to paycheck each month. In contrast, Deborah had a more comfortable upbringing. Her father was a successful businessman, who was able to provide her with all the necessities. She was surrounded by wealthy peers who threw extravagant parties and events. I invested a great deal of effort to achieve my goals. I worked my way through college and eventually landed a job at a prestigious company. My parents were genuinely pleased with how I had built my life without ever depending on them to provide me with financial assistance. When Deborah and I met for the first time, it was at a mutual friend's party. Despite our differences, we had an instant connection, and we started going on dates. Over time, we came to understand each other better. As our relationship progressed, we fell deeply in love. When we began dating seriously, Deborah invited me to one of her family's dinners, during which she introduced me to her parents. This was the first time I met her father, John, a successful businessman, and her mother, Maggie, a devoted homemaker. John, the at-home parent, appeared to appreciate the effort I had made to establish myself in life. In contrast, Maggie, the other parent, did not seem to take a liking to me. It was evident that she looked down on my upbringing and that I did not fit her expectations for the kind of son-in-law she had in mind. In contrast, my mother's disapproval of me was far from subtle. It was painfully evident that she held me in low regard and believed that I was unworthy of her only child. She would often cut me off in conversations and her disapproving glances spoke volumes, making it a challenging and awkward situation to navigate. In contrast, my parents were extremely welcoming to Deborah. They embraced her with open arms, and my brothers took an instant liking to her. They would playfully tease her, telling her that she still had time to run away. My family's support and acceptance of our relationship was heartwarming. As time passed, I attempted to bridge the gap with Maggie, hoping to win her over. I understood that our different backgrounds and expectations might take her some time to reconcile. However, our interactions remained strained, and I could sense her disapproval lingering in the background. Despite this challenge, Deborah and I focused on building our own world together, filled with love, understanding, and shared dreams. We were committed to nurturing our relationship. Despite the challenges posed by familial disparities, we held on to the hope that Maggie would eventually come to accept and embrace me. Unfortunately, a year ago, John passed away from a heart attack, leaving behind substantial wealth. However, there were also unexpected debts that needed to be settled. Maggie was forced to make the difficult decision to sell her house and their car to cover these financial obligations. When the bank came calling, she had no choice but to move in with us, as she had nowhere else to go. She has been living with us ever since. For the past 6 months, I was not particularly concerned about having her live with us, as I was aware that she was experiencing a challenging period following the death of her husband. I made every effort to ensure her comfort, but Maggie consistently identified issues with the house. Deborah and I have consistently shared responsibility for domestic tasks since we began living together, given our respective careers. We alternate between cooking, cleaning, and laundry. This division of labor is a key aspect of our lives, allowing us to balance our demanding schedules and provide mutual support. My parents instilled in me a sense of independence from an early age, which I have carried with me throughout my life. I am comfortable assuming responsibility for household tasks. Maggie, on the other hand, has always been uncomfortable with this arrangement. She has made her disapproval of my role in the household evident throughout our stay. She has made subtle comments about the role of men in the kitchen and the appropriateness of men performing household tasks. I have chosen to ignore these comments, but over time, they have become increasingly hurtful and insensitive. I have discussed this with Deborah, who shares my perspective. Behavior has been notably challenging and confrontational in the wake of the aforementioned incident. I was recently promoted at work, which prompted me to organize a special event to commemorate this achievement with my family and friends. We decided to host a grand celebration, inviting our closest acquaintances. I extended invitations to some of her affluent acquaintances, whom she hadn't seen in a while, particularly after her husband's passing. While I am not one to flaunt wealth, I entrusted Deborah with the planning, who went to great lengths to ensure the success of the party preparations on the day of the celebration. Our house looked. Maggie appeared to be enjoying herself, as evidenced by her interactions with her acquaintances. My fiancé and I were engaged in hosting our own guests and relatives, as the party was in full swing. The guests were engaged in socializing and enjoying the festivities. I observed that Mill's behavior had deteriorated. She had consumed a few alcoholic beverages, and her comments became increasingly inappropriate. She was boasting about the expensive decorations and food in front of her friends. The situation was becoming increasingly uncomfortable, and it was evident that some of our guests were taken aback by her behavior. My fiancé and I exchanged worried glances, uncertain of how to handle the situation. We attempted to remain calm, cognizant that Maggie had been consuming alcohol to a considerable extent since the morning. At one point, we ran out of wine, so I hastened to the nearby liquor store. Upon returning home, I discovered my fiancé outside on the lawn, engaged in conversation with our relatives. I proceeded to serve them their drinks, and then I returned to the interior of the residence to ascertain the status of the remaining guests. That is when I heard my mother-in-law. I overheard Maggie discussing my recent job promotion with her friends, and she proceeded to describe how she had been residing at our place rent-free for several months. She attributed this to my naivety, and she laughed as she continued to say that she had finally landed a son-in-law. She then proceeded to point out that I had been covering her expenses throughout this period while she resided rent-free in my house. Her words stung, and I was taken aback by what she was saying. Her friends were all laughing loudly at my expense. She then went on to say that she was set for the rest of her life now that Deborah was going to marry me in a few months. My emotions were in turmoil, and I struggled with how to handle the situation. It was disheartening to hear these derogatory comments from someone whom I considered family. I had tried my best to welcome and support her during a difficult time in her life. As I stood there in the hallway grappling with a mix of anger, disappointment, and a sense of betrayal, I contemplated whether to confront her or wait for a more suitable moment to talk about this. My Tob Mill then informed her friends that I came from a low. I informed her that I would continue to be a hard worker, and that she had nothing to worry about at that moment. I could no longer tolerate her behavior, and made a decision to walk into the room and confront her right then and there. I wanted to make it clear to her that she would no longer be able to take advantage of me, given her previous actions. I walked into the room, and everyone fell into an awkward silence when they noticed my sudden arrival. Maggie's laughter ceased, and her expression shifted from surprise to a mixture of discomfort and concern. She was worried that I might have overheard the conversation, poured wine for everyone, and placed the bottle down. I may have overheard the conversation in which wine was poured for all and the bottle placed. I faced Maggie and began to speak. I couldn't help but overhear your conversation with your friends. I stood there for approximately 5 minutes listening to you discuss how you've used my perceived naivety to your advantage. I want to make it clear that I welcomed you into my house with open arms and tried to support you during a difficult time, particularly because you had just lost your husband. However, making hurtful comments like this in front of our family and friends and laughing at my expense is unacceptable. The financial implications of this situation were not acceptable. The room remained tense, with a heavy silence weighing down on all of us. I could see that Maggie was taken aback by the directness of my words, and her friends seemed equally uncomfortable. Just as the tension was at its peak, my fiancé walked into the room, his expression a puzzled one. Her facial expression indicated that she was attempting to comprehend the situation. I stood in the center of the room, and Deborah was present. I proceeded to elucidate to her the information that her mother had conveyed to others about me. Deborah's eyes widened in shock as she attempted to grasp the gravity of the situation. Maggie's expression shifted from shock to embarrassment. I was aware that I would be unable to forgive her for the way she had spoken about me. I requested that Maggie immediately leave my house. Maggie's eyes widened as she began to frantically protest, aware that she had nowhere else to go. Deborah remained silent, understanding the extent of my humiliation at her mother's actions. I remained resolute in my decision, emphasizing that I could no longer trust her to live with us. I suggested that she could find accommodation with one of her wealthy friends who had joined the party and were evidently relishing and laughing at the situation. My expense just minutes ago, Maggie looked around the room helplessly as her friends avoided eye contact. I couldn't help but smirk, recognizing that I had reached my limit and was no longer willing to be used and taken advantage of in that tense moment. Deborah, who had been taken aback by the unfolding drama, finally spoke up, addressing her mother. "Mother, with a combination of disappointment and resolve, I must inform you that your behavior today has placed us in an exceedingly uncomfortable position. Despite our best efforts to offer you support, your treatment of my fiancé is wholly unacceptable." Maggie, now caught between her daughter's disapproval and her own mortifying actions, began to recognize the gravity of the situation and attempted to apologize, but I was no longer willing to be manipulated. I was still seething in anger and disappointment, so I excused myself from the party. My future bride apparently left to stay at one of her relatives' places since the incident. I have been receiving messages from people. The reactions of the guests were varied, with the majority expressing support for my decision to defend myself. However, some family members of my fiancé's side have informed Deborah that my actions were inappropriate and that I should not have humiliated her mother in such a manner. My parents, who were present at the party, offered unwavering support and stood by my side. The situation has resulted in a rift between our families, and the mixed opinions are contributing to the tension. I am seeking an objective opinion on whether I was justified in confronting my future mother-in-law in front of others after I caught her making fun of me and informing her that she would no longer be able to rely on me financially. Update: I am grateful for all the feedback I have received. In response to feedback on my previous post, many individuals have proposed that this incident should serve as an eye-opener regarding the nature of the family I would be marrying into. I have received suggestions that I should consider entering into a prenuptial agreement with my fiancé before we are married, which I had not previously considered. However, in light of the recent incident, I am seriously. After the conclusion of the party, my wife and I engaged in a lengthy discussion regarding the incident. While my wife was entirely supportive, I found it challenging to maintain my trust in her. While I do not hold her responsible for the incident, I am concerned about the potential influence of her family in the future. Many comments have highlighted the role of my mother. The in-laws' subtle, mean comments for months were a form of emotional abuse, and I am starting to see it that way. I do not wish to have her in my life anymore. 2 days after Maggie left, she called my wife, who did not answer. She sent me an angry text that read, "Adam, are you happy now that you've separated me from my daughter? I've already lost my husband and now I'm losing my daughter because of you." I used her, but isn't that what a son? The in-laws should be responsible for the expenses incurred by the mother-in-law. The law's expenses could have been used to purchase a new residence for me when I lost my house, but instead, I was forced to live with you. You have more than enough resources to care for my daughter, so it would not be a significant burden for you to care for me as well. Her message left me seething with anger, and it was evident that she felt no remorse for her derogatory remarks in front of her friends. I shared the message with Deborah, who promptly assured me that she would address the situation and advise me to block her mother's number. It remains to be seen what will happen next. However, I feel emotionally exhausted dealing with this ongoing drama. Her mother's persistent unkindness towards me for no apparent reason, coupled with her unwarranted financial expectations, is really taking a toll. In the days that followed, Deborah continued to handle her mother's attempts at contact. She firmly explained to her mother that the situation had become untenable and that she had crossed a line. Deborah offered to help her mother find suitable subtle accommodations, but emphasized that the living arrangement with us had reached its limit. Maggie's responses ranged from anger to pleading. She continued to accuse me of tearing her family apart and causing her more pain during an already difficult time. I had blocked her, and as our wedding was fast approaching, she was unable to reach out to me. I shared my thoughts and fears with Deborah, and she, my fiancé, concurred with my assessment and acknowledged the validity of my concerns. He expressed his willingness to enter into a prenuptial agreement, which he believed would alleviate my unease and discomfort. I was taken aback by his understanding and felt a sense of guilt for harboring negative sentiments towards him, largely due to his mother's actions. The conversation had a positive effect on our relationship. We were beginning to regain a sense of normalcy when Maggie unexpectedly arrived at our residence without prior notification. I was alone at the time and heard the doorbell ring. She had come to confront me and proceeded to accuse me of wrongdoing and express her anger. When I invited her inside to sit, Maggie proceeded to claim that she accused me of ruining her relationship with her daughter, attributing the blame to me. Her words were filled with frustration and resentment. She exclaimed, "You think you can control everything, don't you? You've taken my daughter away from me, and now you're trying to push me out of her life. This is my family too, and you can't dictate what happens here." As the argument intensified, her allegations became increasingly personal and incisive. She accused me of isolating her from Deborah and asserted that she deserved to reside with her daughter. I took a moment to collect my thoughts and responded, "Maggie, this is not about pushing you away. It is about maintaining peace and harmony within our family. Given your status as a member of our family, your actions and words have made it challenging to maintain a healthy environment here. It is not my intention to isolate you, rather, I am attempting to establish boundaries. Deborah and I deserve to have a loving, supportive, and peaceful home. This is not about control, it is about ensuring that our relationship is respected and protected." Thankfully, upon returning from the grocery store, my wife expressed relief that she had managed to interact with her mother in a more composed manner. She was visibly shocked to find her mother standing inside our house, hurrying to my side. She inquired about my well-being, her eyes conveying a clear sense of concern. I nodded, feeling a profound sense of relief to have her presence beside me. Maggie then directed her attention toward her daughter, accused me of attempting to exert control over her life. She stated that she would not allow me to evict her from the house and that she intended to reside there, given that her husband had passed away and my daughter was going to be present. She accused me of attempting to divide the family. Deborah appeared displeased as she informed her mother that, in light of her recent remarks, she could not simply expect me to forget about it. She reminded Maggie that she had never apologized to me for the harsh words she had spoken in front of guests at a party I had hosted in my house. Deborah reiterated to her mother that she was not entitled to live in my house simply because Deborah was going to marry me. Maggie was displeased to see her. My daughter offered me support, but her anger only intensified the situation. The room was filled with intense emotions, and I was determined to avoid further escalation. Therefore, I requested that Maggie leave immediately, as I was prepared to call the police if she did not comply. Maggie's expression reflected a combination of frustration and resignation, indicating her desire to continue the argument. However, she ultimately decided to leave. Following this incident, I intend to take some time away from Deborah and her family. I love her dearly, but I do not wish to remain in a toxic environment indefinitely. I believe it is necessary for me to take a step back and rethink our future. It has been 4 months since my last update. I am aware that this is a considerable length of time, but I am now ready to share an update. I am delighted to share that Deborah and I are now married. I am pleased to announce that I have entered into a marriage with Deborah. Our wedding day proceeded without incident, and it was a joyous celebration of our love and commitment to each other. We were surrounded by our closest family and friends, and the day was filled with joy and cherished memories. I had previously expressed some reservations about marrying Deborah, but after some time apart, I have come to recognize the value of our union. I came to understand that Deborah was not at all like her mother, as we had discussed before our marriage. Deborah did sign a prenuptial agreement, which gave us both peace of mind. It was a decision that helped ensure that our relationship was built on trust, respect, and a mutual understanding of our responsibilities. One notable absence on our special day was Maggie, our mother. In conclusion, it is evident that Maggie's absence from the wedding was a significant factor in the overall atmosphere. In accordance with the law, we did invite her, as I did not want my wife to be the only living parent of my wife's to be absent from our wedding. However, Maggie chose not to attend the wedding. Her anger and resentment towards me from the earlier conflicts which led to our leaving our home permanently still lingered. I could not help but feel sad for Deborah, who had to navigate the difficult decision of having her mother absent on such an important occasion. Nevertheless, our wedding was a day filled with love. We were grateful for the support of our loved ones, who celebrated the beginning of our journey as a married couple in the days following our wedding. Deborah and I have settled into our married life, cherishing the moments we share together and planning for our future. We are excited about the possibilities that lay ahead and believe that our love will guide us through any challenges we might face. Update 4: Married life has been going well so far. Deborah and I have been relishing every moment of our life together as a married couple. We found joy in the little things, from lazy Sunday mornings with breakfast in bed to sitting at home. Our shared reading of books has served to reinforce our bond, enabling us to become more attuned to each other's needs and perspectives. We have embraced the various responsibilities that come with marriage with a degree of ease. Recently, I have taken a significant step in my journey toward personal growth and family healing, thanks to the advice of others. I have decided to commence therapy, which has proved to be a transformative experience. Therapy has provided me with the tools to better understand and express myself and the dynamics within our family. It has allowed me to address the emotional wounds and challenges that I have faced, particularly in my relationship with my mother. The term "in dash" is used to indicate a state of being within a specified context. With the guidance of my therapist, I have been able to communicate more effectively with my wife and work on building a stronger and more communicative relationship. Once I felt I was ready, we tried to reach out to Maggie in the hope of mending the rift that had developed between us. While it was not easy for me to reach out, I knew how much Deborah loved her mother and I did not want her to live her life without being in contact with her only remaining parent. We decided to invite Maggie to our home for dinner so that we could all talk properly. Maggie had been staying at various relatives' places since the incident. When Deborah initially extended an invitation to dinner, she was taken aback. While she initially appeared hesitant, she was also intrigued by the prospect of reconnecting with her daughter. Upon arriving at our residence, we began with small talk to catch up on each other's lives. Deborah was the first to initiate conversation. She began to break the ice by expressing her desire to see a healthier relationship between me and Maggie. She shared how much she loved both of us and wanted to see us get along. Hearing this, Maggie slowly admitted that her actions had been fueled by a sense of loss and uncertainty after her husband's passing. She acknowledged that her emotions had clouded her judgment. She expressed regret for her actions and indicated that she initially lacked an understanding of the extent of the hurt she had caused. It was evident that she was genuinely sorry about the incident. The conversation continued to explore the hurt feelings on both sides, the misunderstandings that had occurred, and the steps that could be taken to mend the rift. It was an emotional and honest discussion marked by tears and heartfelt apologies. Deborah played a crucial role in facilitating the conversation, acting as a bridge between me and her mother. By the end of the evening, there was a sense of relief and optimism in the room. While the wounds of the past had not been completely healed, the foundation for reconciliation had been laid. It was a promising start on the journey toward rebuilding the bonds that had been strained for so long since the evening in question. Since then, Maggie and I have continued to meet, and there is no longer any awkwardness. Our relationship has gradually improved, although I will never feel comfortable enough. As the evening progressed, a sense of relief and optimism pervaded the room. While the wounds of the past had not yet been fully healed, the foundation for reconciliation had been laid. This was a promising start on the journey toward rebuilding the bonds that had been strained for so long. Since that evening, Maggie and I have continued to meet during other family events, and there is no longer any awkwardness. Our relationship has gradually improved. However, I will never feel comfortable enough for her to live with us again. I remain patient and understanding, knowing that healing will take time.